In this video lesson, I'll be going over how to do the online lab about titration. Go to Jupyter and click the To Do tab. Once you're there, you're going to go under Chemistry and look for an online lab titration assignment. Once you find it, click it. It should bring you to this page. Scroll all the way down and you'll see two links for two Word documents. Click both of them and download both of them. So there's two documents because there's two parts to this titration lab. So we're going to first go over level 1 and then I'm going to go over level 2. So once you open the Word document, it should look like this. Right? In both levels, in both parts, we'll be using this website. So copy and paste this link into a web browser. You can use Chrome or you can use Internet Explorer. FireFox glitches the simulation, so avoid using FireFox. Once you're on the website, you're going to register using your full name, so first name, last name. If you cannot do the lab, both level 1 and level 2 in one sitting, then you should write down the code you're given so you go back to it later. Okay? Because it does take a while if there's a lot of parts to this lab. So it should take about an hour to 2 hours to do this lab, more or less. So if you cannot, spare 1 hour or 2 hours to do this lab, then write down the code. Okay, so then you're gonna do lab activity level 1. And once you're completely done with lab activity level 1, there should be a lab book icon on the bottom of the page. You click the icon, that will open the lab book, right? Which is basically what you've done in the lab, right? So think of it as like a completed worksheet, all right? You can then download the worksheet, and then you're gonna submit the PDF on Jupyter. So how do you do that? So once you download the PDF, I want you to rename it. Put your last name, comma, first name, then your titration lab dash level 1. All right, so you'll be submitting two PDFs, one for level 1 and one for level 2. Okay, so once you name both of them, how do you turn this file? You're gonna click this computer, right, and then you're gonna upload both files. Okay, so now let's go to the website. Control C. And you can put it onto an Internet Explorer browser. Okay, so this is the web page of the simulation. So you can click register. Next, enter your first name and last name. I'm just going to enter my last name. Click register, and they're going to give you a code or user number. So save this number. Just in case you cannot do this experiment in one sitting, you want to go back to it. If you lose this code, you cannot go back to the experiment because then you basically wasted your time. So save it somewhere, write it down. So I'm going to show you how to use the code now. So if you go back to the original page, so I'm going to log out. So go to titration. Now log in. So we click log in. So it asks for a user number. So I'm going to enter the user number. And you basically log back in. Okay. So there's two levels you must do for this lab. Level 1 and level 2. So let's start with level 1. So I'm going to click start. And you should open to this page. So I'm going to read it. Welcome to level 1. Hello, my name is Dr. J. I am an analytical chemist and I'll be guiding you through the activities in this level. In level 1, you will analyze samples from a river that has been contaminated with acid. You will perform titration experiments to work out the concentration of acid in the samples. In each activities, you'll be able to collect points. At the end of the level, you can restart to improve your skills. So notice there's a point counter on the bottom. So the maximum points is 1,000. So let's aim for 850 over 1,000 for passing So the lab book I was talking about was this picture on the bottom. So if you click it, it basically tells you what you'll be doing in this lab and what you have done. And once you're done with the lab book, you're going to download the PDF here. If your points are too low, you can restart a certain level, and that's just in case you have below a 50. So click next. So the first is a video about titration, in which there's 100 points available. Okay, so now watch the video by clicking play.
Breaking news. There has been an accident involving a lorry carrying over 1,000 litres of hydrochloric acid. It is feared that some of the acid might have leaked into a nearby river upstream of a site of special scientific interest. Chemists are at the scene to assess the damage and work out how acidic the river has become. When an acid, for example hydrochloric acid, is mixed with water, it completely dissociates, producing a solution of hydrogen ions and chloride ions. Acids can be neutralized by substances called bases. Bases that are soluble in water are called alkalis. When an alkali, such as sodium hydroxide, is dissolved in water, it completely dissociates, so that all of the sodium ions and hydroxide ions are dispersed randomly in the solution. An acid and alkali react to form a salt and water. For example, sodium hydroxide and hydrochloric acid react to form sodium chloride and water. If we draw the dissolved compounds as ions, we can simplify the equation leaving out the sodium ions and the chloride ions. They are known as spectator ions because they appear on both sides of the equation. When we have removed all the spectator ions, we are left with the net ionic equation, showing just the hydrogen ion and the hydroxide ion reacting to form a molecule of water. A concentration of a solution tells us the amount of a substance dissolved in a volume. It is measured in moles per cubic decimeter. We can determine the concentration of hydrogen ions in an acid solution by performing a titration experiment. As the acid is added to the alkali, the hydrogen ions react with hydroxide ions to form molecules of water. The end of the titration is when all of the alkali has reacted. At this point, the pH is neutral. We use an indicator compound which changes color when the point of neutralization is reached. In this example, the balanced equation shows that 1 mole of hydrochloric acid reacts with 1 mole of sodium hydroxide. The amount of alkali can be calculated using the known concentration and volume of the alkali solution. The volume of acid that reacted can be read from the Buret. It's good practice to repeat the titration and calculate the average volume added. We can now rearrange the equation to calculate the unknown concentration of acid. As part of the environmental response team, you will have to act quickly to assess the environmental impact of the acid spill and advise on an appropriate response to protect the site of special scientific interest. Samples from the contaminated river have been collected and transported back to the laboratory ready for you to test. In this activity, you will learn how to set up and run a titration experiment to calculate the unknown concentrations of acid in the samples collected from the contaminated river. You'll need to carefully add just the right amount of acid to the alkali solution to reach the neutralization point and judge when the indicator color changes.
Okay, so after you finish watching the video, notice that one of the white dots became orange. This shows you the progress of your lab. Okay, so how much more you have to do before you complete the lab. So let me just go over the video. So in the video, it talked about a chemical spill. Some acid spilled into the river. You as a scientist want to figure out the concentration of acid in the river. So that is unknown to you. So in order to figure out, you have to do a titration. So basically, if you notice from the video, they put the acid in the Buret, even though that is the unknown concentration. While the known concentration, they put it in the flask. So this is supposed to be reverse. But, experimentally or mathematically, it doesn't matter, right? But I'm just letting you know that's the norm. They put the unknown concentration in the Buret and the known concentration in the flask. Okay, so notice that the base is pink because they added a indicator, phenolphthalein, which is pink in the presence of a base. So as they add acid, it became colorless. Okay, so now I'm going to click next and then click finish. Okay, notice that my points went up. All right, so again, you need 850 points in order to pass this lab. So you can either A, review the lab book, or next activity. So in case you did not get 100 points for a certain activity, you can click review lab book and restart the level until you get enough points to pass. Okay? So since I got all the points, I'm going to move on to the next activity. Alright, so this is basically testing your knowledge by filling the blanks based off the video. So if you were paying attention to the video, this should be quite simple to do. So it says to complete these 5 statements by dragging the correct option into the space provided. Maximum tense 5. So basically, you could drag these boxes into the white blanks, right, to complete the sentence. So hydrochloric acid fully dissociates when dissolved in water. So this is correct because hydrochloric acid is a strong acid. Basically, this HCl. So strong acids dissociate completely. So once you're done with all 5 of these questions, you're going to click check and it'll give you 100 points if you get all of them correct. So I believe there's 2 more of these in the next couple of slides. So I'm not going to show you all the answers. So you're going to pause the video and finish them and resume the video once you complete it because I'm going to move on to the experiments. So after you finish those questions, you should be on this page where it says activity complete, in which you completed the section with questions. I noticed that when you click review lab book, if you click restart the level, you actually restart the entire thing. You cannot just restart a certain section. So as a result, I'm gonna lower the threshold from 850 to 800 out of 1,000 points to pass this lab. Okay, so instead of 850, we're gonna aim for 800. All right, but this lab is relatively simple. As long as you follow the instructions, you should get way above 900. All right, let's click next. So now we're going to start the simulation. So first we got to weigh out the sodium hydroxide, which is our base. So the purpose of doing this step is so we can figure out the concentration of this base. Remember, the base is our known concentration. All right, so we're going to be weighing it out using a top band balance. So you have unlimited attempts for each activity. So the first 5 incorrect would decrease the score by 10 points. So the lowest you could get for this section is 50 points, and the highest is 100. Alright, so this is our balance. You must weigh out approximately 1 gram of sodium hydroxide within 10% error. This is our weighing balance. So notice it weighs something. So we click tare. Tare will set this back to 0. This is our spatula. Notice we have 3 options. This is for a large amount, a medium amount, and a small amount. So notice we went up by 0.21 using this large amount. For a medium amount, you went up by 0.09, and a small amount, you went up by 0.01. So now I'm going to keep adding until I have approximately 1 gram. Okay, so now I have about 1 gram within 10% error. All right, so I'm going to click check, and very good. Okay. All right, now we got to make our solution. All right, so now that we weigh out the sodium hydroxide, we have to make the solution. So that means we're going to dissolve the sodium hydroxide in water. All right, so again, you have unlimited attempts, but after the first 5 attempts, then your score will decrease by 10 points. So you basically, the lowest score you get here is 50. All right. So dissolve the sodium hydroxide with distilled water, transfer it to a volumetric flask, that's this thing over here, and make the solution to be exactly 250.0 cm cubed. Remember to rinse the beaker so that all the sodium hydroxide goes into the flask. Alright, so this is distilled water. Notice how sodium hydroxide is ready in the beaker. I'm going to add this. Okay, now that we dissolve our sodium hydroxide, we're gonna pour it into the flask. But before we do that, we need a funnel so we don't spill over the place. Okay, notice we still have some left over, so we're gonna rinse the beaker and we're gonna add it into the flask. Okay, so if you recall how to use a volumetric flask, the moment the solution volume touches the line, then you have exactly 250 cm3. So you need the level of the solution to touch this line. So we're gonna add some water. So again, we have three options, large, medium, and small. So I'm just gonna keep adding until I have the level touching the line. Okay, so notice that the level is approaching the line. So I'm gonna go slower. So this is drop by drop, basically. So about 2 more drops should do it. Okay, 1 more drop. Okay, so now our meniscus is touching the line. So click check. Very good. Okay, so after you made the solution, now you have to figure out the concentration of that sodium hydroxide, which is your base. So you need this information to determine the unknown concentration of the acid in the river. So this time you have 3 attempts per step in this section. So the lowest score you get is 70 out of 100. So here they ask you to calculate the molar mass of NaOH. So you do this by adding up the atomic masses of each element in the chemical formula of sodium hydroxide. So they give you a periodic table. Keep in mind the atomic masses are the top numbers. The bottom number is actually the atomic number. So don't confuse it. You're going to type it in into these blanks here, and it will give you the total, right, molar mass of sodium hydroxide. You're going to then use that to calculate the moles of sodium hydroxide, which you then calculate to get the concentration of sodium hydroxide. So I'm going to let you complete this section on your own. So pause the video. Once you complete the section, I'll show you how to do the setup for the titration. So after you finish the calculations, you now have the concentration of sodium hydroxide. Now we're going to set up the titration now. So you need to set up the flask for titration. The sodium hydroxide solution has been transferred to a volumetric flask to a beaker. Pipette exactly 25 cm3 of sodium hydroxide into the flask and add the right amount of indicator. So you have unlimited attempts to complete each activity. The first 5 incorrect attempts would decrease your score by 10 points. So again, the lowest you can get is 50 points for this section. Okay, so the pipette has already been rinsed with water. Now it needs to be rinsed with solution. Fill the pipette so it's roughly half filled. You can do this by holding down the up button. So what does that mean? So this is the pipette. This is your sodium hydroxide solution. So basically, we're going to transfer the solution into this beaker by clicking the top button. So you're going to hold on to it. The whole purpose of this is to rinse this pipette. Right? So you can see that it's going up slowly. So you want it halfway. So once the level is touching the line, I'm gonna stop. Okay, you're gonna click this rotate button. All right, so this will rotate the pipette to ensure the entire pipette is rinsed with the solution. All right, so we're gonna transfer that into this. So we're gonna click the down button so that all of it transferred to the waste beaker. right? So now our pipette is rinsed with the solution. We can now use it without any contamination. Okay, so now it asks you to transfer 25 cm cube into the flask and add 2 to 3 drops of indicator. So we need to fill the pipette with the solution. So this is the pipette we just rinsed, right? So we're again going to fill it until it's touching the line. So you want to make sure the meniscus is touching the line. So again, you have to hold on to the top part. Okay, I'm going to go slowly. I'm going to click slowly so we don't go over. Okay, now we're going to transfer it into the flask. Okay, so this is our indicator. So this is probably phenolphthalein, so it'll be pink in the presence of a base. So I'm going to add 2 to 3 drops, so 1 and 2. Okay, so now we know the concentration of a sodium hydroxide, and we know the volume of the sodium hydroxide as well. Okay, so we completed this activity. Now we're going to set up the Buret now. Okay, so first we got to rinse and fill the Buret. So you'll be testing waters from Site B and Site C. You need to prepare the Buret for the first sample. So click Site B to begin. So B is over here, so I'm going to click it. All right. To prepare the Buret, you need to first rinse it and fill it with samples from Site B. So start by rinsing the Buret with distilled water. As a safety precaution, you want to make sure the top of the Buret is below the eye level when you fill it. So basically, you want to make sure you're looking from above. All right. So let's first rinse it. Okay. So I'm going to click check. So now we rinse our Buret. Okay. Now we're going to rinse the Buret with some of the sample taken from Site B. So this is the acid. So I'm going to put a funnel on top of the Buret so we don't spill anything. Now we're going to rinse the Buret. Okay, very good. All right. So now we're going to fill the Buret with the sample. Remember to close the tap when filling the Buret. So this is how you close the tap. When it's 90 degrees, it is closed. If it's straight up, then it's open. All right. So remove the funnel afterwards to show that the fill level remains constant. So let's close it first. Now we're going to add the acid and remove the funnel. So adjust your eye level so that it's in line with the level of the solution. So you basically want to make sure you're on eye level so you so you look at the initial volume. Okay, so now we have the titration experiment set up. We could start the experiment simulation now. Titration experiment. Next, you need to perform the titration experiment on the samples you collected from the river. You'll be using phenolphthalein indicator, which is pink under alkaline conditions and colorless under acidic conditions. So again, the lowest you could get is 50 points, but the maximum is 100. Okay, so this is our titration setup. So we have our acid in the Buret and our base inside the flask, right? So do a trial titration first to get an idea of roughly how much solution to add. So we'll be doing 3 trials altogether, but our first one is basically just like a rough ones to get a basic idea how much to add. The first and the second one is basically the ones you're gonna use for your data. So start by reading the initial volume of the Buret and record your answer in the table. All your reading should be entered within 2 decimal places that ends with either 0 or 5. So check help reading a Buret button if you need more information. That's this button here. So if you forgot how to read it, this will show you how to read a Buret. Okay, let's look at our Buret now. So here we have from 10 to 11. So notice it will go up by 0.1. So this will be 10.5, right? So here we got 10.1, 10.2, 10.3. And since it wants 2 decimal places, it will be 10.30. Okay. Click Start to begin running the solution into the Flask. So what this means, if you click Start, you're gonna open the tap, and the acid is gonna flow into the solution in the Flask. And once the solution becomes colorless, click Stop. That means that the color change is permanent. So remember, phenolphthalein is colorless in the presence of an acid. So once it turns color, your base is completely neutralized. So let's click Start. So our tab is open. We're adding the acid into the flask now. Once the color change, so most of it is colorless, then we can click Stop, right? Okay, so this is, mostly done. It doesn't have to be perfect. So let's click check. All right. Okay, now we need the final reading or final volume of the Buret so we can figure out how much solution we added into the flask. So again, if you need help reading it, click this button here. So we have 26.1234. We have 26.440. Okay. Now to figure out the amount of volume we added, you have to subtract the initial volume from the final volume. So basically, you could use a calculator. We basically added 16.10. Okay. All right. So that was just our rough trial. Now you're gonna repeat the experiment twice to get the first accurate and the second accurate titration data. All right. So you're gonna do the rest on your own. And once you're done, you can resume this video. So pause this video now. Okay, so after you finish the experiment, now we're going to get into the calculations because we still need to determine the unknown concentration of the HCl in the river samples you titrated. So again, the lowest you could get is 70 in this case, and the highest is 100. Okay, so we're almost done with this simulation. Notice that we only have maybe one section left to go. So we're going to do a series of calculations to determine the unknown concentration of the acid. We're going to first calculate the moles of the base that was used in the titration experiment. Remember, at neutralization, moles of the base is equal to the moles of the acid. So basically, we're just going to drag boxes here for this first part. So the next series of calculations will be determining the unknown concentration of the acid. So I want you to do this section by yourself. So pause the video and resume once you're done with all the calculation. So once you finish the calculations and the questions, you basically finish the simulation. You can look at the bottom. So here, you're just gonna give me some feedback on where you did well. So one sentence is good enough. Where you can make improvements. So again, one sentence is good enough. And I want you to answer this question. What if you were to test the river 3 days later? What do you think your results will be? All right. So once you're done with that, you can click End Activity. And you can download your lab book. So click this icon on the bottom. All right. So this is basically a summary of what you did. And you can download the lab book here. So click Download PDF. And you should be able to download the lab book. So once you're done, you can close the browser and you can do level 2 on a different day, or you click this button to begin level 2 now. So this is basic level 2. So if we click Experiments Home, Okay, so this is the home page. Click titration. All right, so now we're back with the experiments. So in this lab, you're going to be doing level 1 and level 2. All right, so in case you close the browser by accident, download the lab book. All right, here. So again, your goal is to get 800 out of 1,000 for level 1. For level 2, notice it's out of 800. So your goal here should be 600 out of 800. All right. So I've given you a basic tutorial on how to do these simulations. You should be able to do level 2 on your own. All right. If there's any questions, please email me or contact me. Remember to rename the PDF with your name and submit both files to Jupyter.